Welcome to Let's Chat with Julie Lewin in the Trauma Talk series, where together we'll navigate the depths of the impact trauma has on our lives and collective well-being, shining a light on resilience, healing, and the transformative power of doing the inner work. I'm your host, Julie Lewin. Thank you for joining us. Good morning and welcome back to another episode of Let's Chat with Julie Lewin. And today I have the great honor and privilege to have Zach Phillips. Zach, do you like Zachary or Zach?
Oh, look, it's just funny. On my books, I go Zachary, but I prefer Zach. I don't know why I've done that.
Because I know you as Zach. So
yeah, we'll go Zach.
Okay, we'll go Zach. And so I am just going to introduce you to Zach because he is doing something amazing. He's a poet, an author, a mental health advocate, and that's what I'm really interested in diving into with you, Zach, and a mindset coach. And in these roles, he has helped thousands of people move from a place of surviving to passionately thriving. And you're the kind of person I love to talk to. He's the author of 16 books. He teaches on Skillshare, Insight Timer, and Udemy. And he hosts the Reality Check podcast. And he is the creator of Ask a Poet YouTube channel. Wow, Zach, you're doing a lot. He's a qualified teacher, personal trainer, lifelong martial artist and coach, a disability support worker, a Reiki master, and is currently studying a Master of Counseling. And he offers mindset coaching and mentoring and is available for speaking engagements and podcast appearances. Wow. I think we're going to have an awesome chat today.
Let's do it.
And so why don't you just give a little bit of a backstory and then we'll get into having a good chat.
Yeah, it's funny hearing all of that all in one go. It's like I'm doing a lot, but it feels, like you're sort of like you're doing day by day, and it's like, oh, you look back and you've got all of these things. It's like 16 books far out. My backstory is ostensibly one of like I'm sort of reluctant to say sort of trauma, but it's like that it has been a defining aspect of my past and sort of interwoven with spirituality and artistry, and there's sort of like this tapestry of interplay between it all. But basically, like, I moved out of home at 16.
Wow.
My mum and my father broke up when I was quite early, and my dad went down this path of, at the time, it just seemed like drug use, but upon reflection, it's, drug use caused by past trauma that wasn't treated well and yada, yada. But the lived experience was of not a safe environment, not by him, but not kept safe by him. So it's a lot of complex issues there. Some issues with my mum's house, a whole variety of stuff, ending up leaving home quite early and just running. I've got this feeling of just running my entire life, escaping from something real and then something imagined, something remembered sort of thing. So it's like gone into that sort of, my life is ostensibly great now, but the complexities of my mind makes me feel like, I'm running from a lot of stuff that the reality of my lived experience now is not true. But, the complexities of mental health and that sort of stuff makes it feel like it's still happening, That's the sort of mental health side of things. And my sort of self-treatment, I've gone down the path of martial arts to first make me feel safe in my body, safe in my life, safe in my physicality. But that has become an art form now. And then I've moved in from that into teaching and now into book writing and mainly into poetry. And I sort of write, create, express. My philosophy is that, you can heal through art, you can heal through expression. And if you 100%. If you get it out onto the page, or at least not necessarily on the page, because art can be anything really, but just get it out. And the act of sort of processing, getting it out, living through it, moving through it is healing itself. In addition to all of the stuff you should be doing, diet, exercise, meditation, therapy if you need it, medication if you need it, etc., etc. So that's sort of like there's a lot of intricacies that we can explore, and I'll take you
absolutely
down the path.
I've got a question actually, because this has been happening to me lately, maybe this year, that memories, like memories are flooding from my earlier years that I don't think I've ever remembered before. Is
Mm.
that happening for you?
It's funny, like memory is a really weird thing for me. So
Mm,
like the simple answer is yes, like things come back.
yeah.
Um, but my memory, and I think a lot of people's lived experiences with sort of a complex PTSD sort of situation is that I actually have very little in the way of memory of myself. There's different types
Mm,
of memory. There's memory of the self, memory of
mm,
events, and memory of like facts.
yeah.
My memory of like external to me memory is really good. Like,
Yeah.
you see a bookshelf
Yeah.
behind, like
Same.
I just download this stuff, but then I think back to my own sort of, there's a technical term for it. I used to know it, but like my own lived experience memories, it's like very sporadic. It's like, here's a
Mm,
bright flashbulb moment followed by dimness, bright
mm.
flashbulb followed by dimness. Um, and I thought that was normal for a while, and now I'm realizing that that's a sort of
Uh,
symptomatic of
that's,
that.
yeah, yeah. Look, my sister used to say to me, I don't believe you, Julie, when you say you don't remember. How can you not
How
remember
can you not
that?
remember, right? It's offensive to people. It's like people get
Ah,
offended. Like I'll talk to my partner Maria, and she'll be like, "Oh, remember this thing we did together?" And I'm like, "No, no." Like, and it's not like, not even like that memory wasn't itself traumatic, but it's like my brain has taught itself not to remember,
yeah, yeah,
And it's like my
yeah,
memory is getting better the older I get and the more sort of healing I do. But it's hard. And
mm,
it's people take offense to it because it's like, why can't you remember these things? And yeah, they don't believe you. It's this whole
yeah.
thing, but
It's a protection mechanism.
100%, 100%. But like things do come back. I think I like this idea of like shadow work um or inner child work. It's sort of like there's a lot of interplay between those two
Yeah,
spaces, but the more you start looking back, the more your past or whatever sort of spirituality you assign to that,
yeah,
the more you're shown it's like, hey, remember that thing? Here you go. And like for me, I've been sort of going heavy down this sort of shadow work stuff and
mm,
the darker, less desirable aspects of my past, things I've said and done that I'm not proud of, that I wouldn't do again, that were, potentially mean or like, not something that I would like identify with. It's like, hey, remember that thing you did? I'm like, oh shit, I did do that thing. That's not, and like I'm sort of looking at it going, the younger, potentially sicker version of me was justifying these actions or behaviors or thoughts or feelings
mm,
in a way to save itself. But
mm.
objectively, it wasn't good. And it's sort of like I'm now having to sort of like reintegrate and confront the good and the bad and the ugly.
Yeah, I'm curious about this because if you hadn't done those things, you wouldn't be who you are today.
That's the thing that I always think of. It's like, would you change? For you, you've got a history of the diagnoses and all of the other things that you've gone through, right? It's like you don't want to have that. You would ideally not have to have that experience, but in having that experience, you became you. It gave you
Exactly.
it gave you access to so much more. I mean, it's I mean, for both of us potentially, it's like it's career opening in a weird, like it's all interlinked and intertwined, and the people that
It
you link in
is.
because of it, it's sort of like even just from a personal sense, it's like it's a creation of your personality and who and what you are. So it's like I don't want to like if I could click my fingers and not have gone through it, yes, but no.
Do you
It's
think that the like I'm sure everyone experiences dark times. I'm sure everyone experiences what I call the valley floor. I I think that for us to be the vet, I don't even know if I like the best version of myself. To be someone that I respect, someone that I love, someone that I'm proud of. When I look back on my journey, which has, been a while, I think those difficult times, those challenging times, they're the times that made me like feel like I was up against the wall. And when we're in that place, we kind of feel like we don't have any choices. But the thing is to not leave. It's to, that's the doorway for us to actually go deeper and to find that resilience, find that grit in our belly of, I'm not going to let that, like, it's kind of like that roar, isn't it?
There's many like sort of storytelling tropes. It's, the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
You've gone like the hero with a thousand faces. You have to enter the underworld before you can be reborn. You have to, like you're not in darkness, you're a seed being planted. Like that's a common trope
Mm,
of storytelling and of,
mm.
personal experience. Like I'm in the process of writing a book called Poetry from the Dark Night of the Soul. And it's
Wow.
going to be,
Yeah.
I've captured the poetry that I've written over the last maybe 2 years, and I'm going to put it in chronological order so you could see this descent, because I've had a real rough couple of years, like this
Mm,
descent and then sort of this hopefully coming back up through poetry. Um, and yeah, it's sort of like in the moment, you either quit or you keep going. The
yeah.
like real talk, there's a bit of advice that I was given when I was like, would have been like a late teen or a young adult, which was
Mhm.
basically, before you do something you can't take back, try everything first.
Mm,
Try everything first. And that to me is like that literally saved my life, because it's you're up against that wall, you feel like quitting. It's like, no, let's step through. Let's
yeah.
quit the job. Let's apply for the job. Let's break up with the partner. Let's get a new, like let's do
Correct.
try the medicine, try it, try everything, because
Try it.
what have you got to lose that you're not
You
gonna, you know
haven't,
what I mean? It's,
like,
until you lose it, right? It's
like people would say to me, well, what's the worst that can happen? Do you know what my answer would always be? I could die.
yeah, yeah, and that's
That's
it.
my
Like,
always my worst
oh,
scenario.
the interesting thing is though, when you're in that down space, like from a place of depression, I I think people have a misconception around depression that it's feeling sad or feeling
Hmm.
bad. But to me, it's more like an absence of. It's like if I'm feeling good or feeling bad, that's two sides. Like that's those two things are on one side of the coin. The opposite to both of those is nothingness, oblivion, like
Mm,
absence. Because
mm.
it's like if you're feeling, and like, yeah, don't get me wrong, like, yeah, feeling bad feels really bad, but feeling nothing is like that's a different level of, you know what I mean? Like that's a
Yeah, yeah.
it's a weird space to be.
It's, I call that the void,
Yeah.
in the void. And, when people are trying to make changes in their lives, and that can look like anything, what happens is you let you consciously begin letting the old patterns go, the old life go. And then there's this, I call it limbo land, where you're not actually in that space where you're imagining that you want to be, and that there's a lot of void in that limbo space, because, and that can be relating to family, job, home, um spirituality, or growth, personal development. And no one seems to talk about the limbo land or the void of, you see where you want to be, you know where you don't want to be. The shift from there to there doesn't happen overnight, right?
Mm,
And in my personal experience, it can take a number of years to transition from this to there fully.
mm.
What's your experience been of that?
I think that there has to be. So, Maria, but
Mm,
maybe the listeners don't. My partner is. I'll come back to this. So if I deviate off, let me know. But is the daughter of an Orthodox priest, and her spiritual experience has been to sort of pull away from the orthodoxy into her own spirituality. And when she met me, I would say agnostic. I used to be quite
mm,
strongly atheist. Like, no, like if
mm,
it's not provable, no. But then I had some sort of realizations that like there would be literally nothing that could prove anything to me. Like it was sort of like this sort of like almost religiously atheistic. Anyway, she allowed me to just sort of voice the feelings, and sort of open me up gently. And it's sort of, I don't have her beliefs, but I have belief.
Mm.
And the reason I'm saying all of this is that even from a non-religious, non-spiritual perspective, I think having faith, hope, and love is
Yeah.
is key. And this is sort of what she's suggested to me. And the reason I'm saying this is if you don't believe that there's anything that can change, right? If that's a fact to you, if it's a fact that nothing's going to change, then why would you act, right?
Correct.
And it's sort of like, so for me, it's like, okay, why should I do this practice? Why should I exercise every day? It's because you have faith and you have hope, and it doesn't even need to be ungrounded. You
Mm.
know, the idea that, you can look at scientific research. If you do this meditation, if you do exercise, if you do this treatment, whatever it is, this percentage of people get better, right?
Yes.
But then you have to have the faith or the hope that that's going to be you that
Yeah.
gets better, right? But it's
Yeah.
sort of like, I think we tend to look at the world, like, particularly when we're in a bad mental state,
Mm.
we're here, and it's like, okay, that works, but for other people.
Right.
One of the counters that I like is that when you are feeling overly emotional,
Mm.
counter it with logic. Yeah,
Mm.
so it's like you're in this you're flipping out emotionally. It's okay. Well, logically, what I'm experiencing is a part of the common human experience.
Yeah.
Fact. Another fact. People in my position get better through meditation, medication, intervention. Da, da, da. Like, there is a way that
Yeah.
people in my position get better.
Yeah.
Therefore, if I try these things perpetually, keep going down these paths, I will get better. That's like cold logic,
Yeah.
you know? Um, and when cold logic is failing you, you can turn to emotion, love, connection, support,
Mm.
this sort of this belief that, like, science doesn't know everything and there's more to it. So you're going to have to explore different places. So it's this sort of combination of all of those things together that help you through that path. Now,
Yeah.
and it's not just one step, it's many steps. And
Correct.
you might find like sort of big light bulb moments. So can I deviate to a little story?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, this is just recently. So since speaking to you last, I'm undergoing a TMS treatment, which is electromagnetic things to the part of the brain that regulates mood,
Mhm.
and it's working. And as an aside, I'm using, Maria recommended the Archangel meditation thing that you suggested, where you're visualizing the spirit doctors stuff.
Oh, yes.
So I'm getting the treatment. It's triggering this part, and I'm visualizing, and it's like I'm imagining, it's hitting that right spot, and it's working.
Yeah.
I had a family gathering, and there was zero anxiety. Like
Oh, Zach,
oh, it's incredible.
I've got
But
goosebumps.
oh, I'm blown away, and like the psychiatrists there were advocating like that we shouldn't be on medication. We should be doing this first because then you're free, right? And
Yeah.
there's a whole variety of things, and it's literally changing my life. But the story of it is this: I wasn't aware of how depressed I was, and
Mm.
Maria was out to work. My oldest boy, 7, comes into the room, and he's like, Daddy, the house is going to burn down. I'm like, what are you talking about? We go into the room. He's knocked over a lamp. And broke the lamp's broken. I pick up the lamp, not realizing it's still on and still live. And I
Oh,
bring it up and I touch it to my body by accident and electrocute myself. Very briefly. Bit of pain, but it hits the spot in my body where I hold my trauma. There's a bit in my sort of left lower belly that, like, the body keeps the score sort of
yeah,
situation.
yeah, yeah.
If I exercise my belly too much, if I stretch there too much, if I push into there too much, it triggers me, right?
Wow.
And it hit right on that spot. Later that night, Maria comes home and she goes to me are you all right? I'm like, yeah. She's like, I've not seen you this happy and giddy for so long.
Oh.
And I'm like, huh, okay. And then, like, sort of that sort of this idea of like this random chance, electrocuting me.
Not random, right?
I know,
Oh
yeah. Like,
gosh.
this is
Uh,
exactly it. Um,
yeah.
so that was one of these sort of turning point moments. I'm like, oh my God, I've been so down and so depressed that a this is like, it literally takes me getting electrocuted to feel good. I'm like, I need to move
Well,
into,
Zach,
you know,
not just electrocuted, but on the spot that you
almost
need to
like
be
perfectly. Like, I've
electrocuted.
got there was like two prongs of the electric, like, right there. I'm like, this is wild, right? Um, and then I'm like, so that happened, and then a more down story. I was like, it was my birthday. Birthdays aren't great for me, and
Mm,
I ended up, they're quite triggering, to be honest, for a variety of reasons. And my mum ended up coming to pick me up and the kids up and took her to her house, and I broke down in front of them. I've never done
mm,
that, broken down
mm.
in front of Maria and the kids, but not my mum and stepfather and brother and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And those two together made me realize, I'm like, okay, like let's reframe what's going through here as depression. Let's use this as a thing to take action. It's like, okay, I've seen the demon, I've seen the devil, I've seen the problem,
Mm.
reframe it however you like, but it's like, okay, here's the thing that I need to combat.
Yeah.
Medication doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I've had really bad experiences, and I've even got genetic tests.
Yeah.
Like they won't work for me, like
Yeah. Yeah.
genetically, right? Um, TMS is an option that is working, but
That's fantastic.
I couldn't have chosen that without years of self work to be able to sort of
Yeah.
admit it, own it, drop the ego for it, accept it, feel trusting in the system, like.
Hmm.
And I'm treating each session like a meditation, like doing your
Yeah.
visualization, and then just um, it's 35 sessions, so it's like it itself is almost like this sort of journey, this
It's a
process.
journey for
So
sure.
it's so like, and then I'm
Yes.
like, after every session, I'm going to the park and doing some Tai Chi and meditation. So
Hmm.
point is there's been a lot of little steps along the way, but then there's some big moments of like light bulbs, like, hey, think of this, and
Yeah.
the agnostic atheist part of me is like, it's all chance, it all just happens, and the spiritual part of me is like, is it though? Like, but
Exactly.
ultimately it doesn't matter whether or
And
not
you,
it's guidance or whether or not it's chance. It's like, let's just
correct.
keep persisting.
And you just said something. It's not just one thing, it's a bunch of little steps. And I think that that's what people maybe don't realize, or they don't understand, that our well-being is like a whole bunch of little steps. With those moments, we have those rare flashes,
Mm.
but it's little steps of consistency or
Well,
persistence
every
every
day, like
day,
get
every
up,
day.
get up and meditate daily, exercise
Yeah,
a bit daily, like do,
yeah,
yeah, it's the small grains of sand every day, and then eventually it's a
exactly.
tipping point.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, like you can, I don't know, you got to sort of prove it to yourself. You've got to earn the muscle, so to speak. There's many analogies
And
there as
you
well.
know, Zach, one of the things that I know, because I've worked with thousands of people, that people beat themselves up about is they were doing the thing daily and then they stop
Mm,
and then they regress and they go, oh, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. And I say to them, that is a really awesome thing that you just did.
mm,
And they go, oh, why? So because now you have the contrast of what happens when you do
mm.
the thing
Yep.
and what happens when you don't. And the thing is, when we're doing those incremental daily things, we actually literally forget what we felt like.
We acclimatize very
We
quickly to
do.
change.
And
Yeah.
that's why I recommend that people write a journal on the journey,
Yep.
because you literally forget how bad you felt or how unwell you felt or whatever. And all you're seeing is, well, I feel crap. I still feel
You see your current problems.
correct.
Yeah.
And it's only when you stop doing the things that you are doing on faith and hope
Mm,
and trust, and you stop doing those things and you go back down, you slide back down, you go, oh, it is actually doing something. And then
yes.
you come back and you start doing it again. And yes, you have to walk those steps again,
Mm,
but you're doing it like a loop above where you did it last time, because you have knowledge, you have understanding that when I do ABC, this is going to help me. And so
mm.
you have that knowledge, but nobody can give you that experience. It has to be a lived experience.
Yeah, and that's a really good reframe. I haven't thought of that. It's like, like the quote unquote failure
Mm,
is now a lesson to go, okay, well, look, this is what the progress that you've come through. The
yeah.
the other reframe, like when I'm helping people with like habit building, is to highlight that, like, some days you will forget, you will drop off. That's fine. The only way that you, like, for example, let's say you're trying to quit smoking or you're trying to implement an exercise thing, if you miss a day a week, right, that sounds bad. It's like, oh, I ate the cake on Sunday, or I had my smoke, or whatever. It happens. If you pull back to a year, right,
Hmm.
then you've now done what, 6 out of 7 weeks. That's 300 successes and 50 failures. If you're gonna,
Yeah,
quote unquote, success and failures, that's so much more than you would have done anyway. So, like,
correct.
even if you like it, you don't have to be like, even if you miss some, the only way you fail is if you actually stop trying. So it's like
Correct.
you might regress back, and yeah, you've taken those 4 steps back, but with your reframe there of, like, it's like, now you see why you can keep stepping forward. So there's many different ways.
Exactly.
Habit building is
Exactly.
really really interesting as a concept, because it's,
You know,
yeah,
I don't know what you say to your clients, but I say to my clients, if you're going to bring in a new habit, bring it in conjunction with an existing habit. And
yep,
so um, we all have well, I hope we all have a shower or a bath every day. We all have to go to the toilet. Like, seriously, if somebody tells me they don't have to do that, then I think that there's something very wrong. But we all have to go to the toilet. So that's a little room that we can shut the door, and we absolutely have permission to be in there. Like,
I see what you're
society
saying.
says
Yep.
you're allowed to go to that little room and sit in there for some minutes. And so what I say to people is, if you feel like what I'm asking you to do, and my processes only take like minutes, then piggyback it on going to the toilet and take another minute or two just for yourself
Yep.
while you're in there and do this process,
Yep.
because it doesn't take, I'm not asking you to do an hour or a half hour full on deep meditation. I'm asking you to do a quick visualization
Mm.
that you can do quickly. But the other great thing about the toilet, the shower, as soon as you sit on the toilet, science has proven you drop into your alpha levels.
Mm.
And that's where we can do the visualization and
Mm.
the repatterning of our neural pathways really well.
Mm.
Because you're not asleep, you're not on high alert. You're actually in this space where you can do some really cool things.
So there's two things I want to take it down. I do want to
Yeah,
talk about, like, how I would suggest habit building, but I think a more, detour. We can come back to it if
yeah,
it comes
yeah,
up. But on the idea of visualization, for years I couldn't visualize. I just couldn't. Right?
yeah,
It didn't make sense. It was a block, this whole thing, and Maria would be pushing the visualizations, sharing your stuff, sharing other people's stuff. It didn't make sense. I couldn't picture it in my mind. And then she worked with me in that belly space,
mm-hmm,
physically and sort of psychically, I suppose. And then I went on a seminar with Miroslav, and I think he might be
mm-hmm,
coming on your podcast at some
yeah,
stage.
yeah, he
And the
is.
two of them together, basically, I got my belly back, as in, like, this trauma space that was like where my
Mm-hmm,
belly was, I recognized was this big black void. And now that's been removed, and it's like there's different imagery there, but it's almost like a sort of reclaimed part of my body.
mm-hmm,
Um, which, sort of bringing it back to the TMS, I would have had to go through that to be able to even do this sort of thing.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's that. But since Maria helping me to sort of remove this blackness, and then sort of Miroslav sort of, like, magic, doing his magic on here, I've been able to visualize stuff, picture
yeah,
things in my mind, which is fascinating to me, because it's like, I've tried your stuff before that, and it's sort of like, until something happened within me, I
yeah,
couldn't follow along. And all visualizations, all visual, like that as a concept, as a meditation style, I'm like, what? Like, it just didn't connect with me in any sense. But
yeah,
now that I've, like, whatever happened is unlocked, it's like these visualizations are like hyper powerful, both from a healing perspective, but also like a goal setting perspective. And, like, I
correct.
can I can picture. now where I want to be in the future.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm heading there. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, and
absolutely.
that's never happened before. So it's weird. I just wanted to sort of throw that
Yeah.
to you, being like,
And and
you know,
that's
like it's
really interesting because one of my students at the moment, because I'm teaching this to practice counselors actually,
mm,
and she takes her husband through one of the processes before he goes and plays golf,
yeah,
and he's now winning at golf.
nice. Yes, you got to think you can win. You got to believe you can win. You know,
Yeah,
you got to
yeah,
see it.
yeah,
I watched there's a Netflix documentary and books, whatever, written by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and his main thing, you know, he was bodybuilding champion,
yes,
movie all-star, and then the governor, right? Like
yeah,
that's he keeps coming back to it every time. He's like, I could see it, and the moment I
yes,
could picture it, it was real, and he just
yeah, yeah,
knew it. And it was like I've never like watch it. It's incredible. Like whether or not you like, you know, whatever him, from a visualization, self-actualizing perspective, he saw the goal and he could picture it in his mind solid. He was up on stage, he was, you know, in the movies,
mm,
he was doing the whole thing, and then he made it happen because it was real. He saw it
yeah,
real, and then it made it real. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
there's a power there, you know?
yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
And so um the thing about visualizing, a lot of people think that they have to see what the visualization is behind their eyelids as well.
mm,
And if you believe that, as in not you personally, but if somebody believes that they have to see or imagine behind their eyelids, it is a black void. Yeah.
So you got to reframe what visualizing actually
Correct.
is. Yeah. So this is yeah.
Visualize.
It
And
feels like a
so how
feeling
I
or an
do that
embodiment, sort of.
is I say to my clients, can you describe your bedroom to me? And they go, yeah, like duh. And I go, well, describe it to me. And they say, well, I've got a bed, I've got two bedside tables, I've got this, I've got that. I say to them, how can you even tell me that? Like, how do you even know that? And they go, well, I remember. I have an image in my mind. I said, that is visualization. That faculty
Mm,
of remembering is the same faculty that you use for visualization.
mm,
And they go, oh,
mm.
oh, I didn't know that. And so once, like, there is 1% of the world that literally cannot visualize, or
Yes.
that's a medical condition. 75% of people will say, yeah, I can visualize. Those other 24%, that's what I say to them.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way of like showing them you're already doing it, but you don't know, sort of thing.
Correct.
That oh, see, like since this whole sort of change, since the TMS, like this, the, I'm going down. I want to sort of go down this path of sort of like a mindfulness or a presence,
Mm,
this sort of
yeah.
nowness. I'm more and more sitting in the now, and what you're saying of like this idea of people sort of having it and already being able to do it is very resonant of sort of sitting in stillness of the moment. It's always
Mm,
there. It's always forever there. But
mm,
it's sort of so immediately obvious that it's not. We sort of overlook it.
yeah.
So it's sort of like since going through this process, going through these treatments, I've been meditating for ages, but only
Mm,
just like in sort of glimpsing mindfulness. But
mm,
now I can sit down and look at like a plant or a tree or just some slight sort of visual movement, some just sit and within 3 minutes, I'm here and now. And it's sort
mhm.
of it's always been there. You know, it's just this funny thing. It's like it's always there, but your brain just trips you off.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
for me, I needed more interventions than perhaps most people. But
Yeah.
it's sort of interesting. I'm looking at it like going, okay, well, I've developed all of these things that work for me and other people from a compromised position. So what
Mm,
if I was to, you know, get the right treatment for my mind and
mm,
then continue with those things? Because, you know, it'd be very
yeah.
easy to like drop it all because it's like I'm fine. It's like, no, let's keep it going and I can really,
And
really
that's
thrive, you know?
that's a really, really awesome point there, because that's what happens in
Mm,
my observation. You get, like, when you don't feel great, you do the work.
You've got to
do
put in the
the work,
scaffolds, right?
right? And then you start feeling great. And then you go, oh, I don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And then you slide back. It's the fact that you're actually doing the work daily that keeps your frequency at that level.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be able to do, like, like I said, like all of the things that I'm doing leading up to, if I hope this works, and if this is the thing that quote unquote works, it's like it'd be very easy to point to that one thing. Oh, the TMS is what did it. It's like, no, like the 20 years of therapy
Correct.
and meditation and exercise and
Yes.
like all of these things led me to be able to accept this treatment. Because if you
Yeah.
forced me into it 20 years ago,
It,
yeah, like maybe,
there may not have been a result, Zach.
yeah, I don't know, like back to the habit building and the change. There's one that I like to use, or two actually, which is like
Yeah.
you're describing pegging, or like the idea of like pegging a behavior to another behavior.
Mm,
If you get up and brush your teeth, like peg something to that. So like I get up and I do my meditation, my exercise, like we go pop, pop, pop.
mm,
Morning rituals are important, but the one that I suggest to people to get them to start meditating is, or at least to sort of to bring meditation into their day rather,
mm,
is a door handle technique. Every time you touch a door handle, it could be any door, could be just entering, leaving your house or your workspace or your car. But
mhm.
anytime you touch a door, just one mindful breath. You touch the door,
That's perfect.
and what a
Yeah.
little just take, if you just take one breath, just one,
Yeah,
you can just feel everything just drop.
it does.
Great. That's one. And the other is I've got a watch and it beeps every hour. And this is sort of, it's triggered externally. It's beep beep and it beeps.
Yeah.
Check into myself. One
Yeah.
breath. So it's sort of like there's external reminders, there's sort of
Mm.
touching reminders, and it's, no one knows what you're doing, but it's a way to regulate back into
Yeah, yeah.
presence, into the space, into yourself. And for me, if you've got, like anxiety and your brain sort of tenses up, it's like you just remind, it's like, okay,
Yep.
we're here.
Drop back down. Yeah.
We're golden. I like the idea
Yeah, I
of it.
like that.
Yeah.
That's really, really beautiful. And it's I can't imagine now going to sleep at night without doing my meditation routine.
You
So
couldn't. It'd be a different experience, eh?
I just I think I'm not actually even game to not do it because,
What do you do? What's the summary of the how
well,
do you
I developed this actually this routine I developed for when I had a relapse of cancer back in 2011, 2012. And I thought, I'm not going to the doctor. I'm not going that way. So I have to change my frequency. I have to do something.
Hmm.
And I'd read, I don't know if you've heard of David Wilcock. He wrote a book called The Hidden Science of Lost Civilizations.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine said, oh, we went and had a weekend visit. He said, you might like this book, Julie. And I went, can I read that tonight? And so I went to bed at like 10 o'clock and I read till midnight, and I was mind blown with the science that's in this book. And in the morning I said, oh my God, Adam, that is so amazing.
Mhm.
He said, you know what, Julie, you have that copy. I will buy another copy for myself. I think that book was probably the greatest gift I ever received. And it's full of highlighting, full of underlining, and it's full of science.
Hmm.
And I knew I wasn't feeling well. And so I read two things in the book. One was that scientists had discovered that if they shine ultraviolet light on DNA, which is cells, that it almost destroys those cells. But if they shine a weak pulse of one slither of the ultraviolet light on that cell, overnight it heals.
Hmm.
And I thought, oh, so if I do that to my holographic body, I can heal my body.
Hmm.
And the other thing that I read was that there's frequency in the pyramid. There's frequency somehow within that. And I thought, You know what? When I was a kid back in the 70s, my dad was right into this stuff, and he built a paper pyramid to the exact dimensions of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And he said, if this is true, my razor blade will sharpen. His razor, like from his shaver. So he put it on the bookshelf with his razor blade inside, and his razor blade would resharpen. And so he did that experiment, and that was a memory that was triggered. And so I imagine every night that I sleep in the pyramid,
Nice.
in a crystal cave within the pyramid with the light. And when I started doing that with our students and they're doing it with their clients, what happens is your life softens. All the sharp edges seem to soften, relationships deepen, life feels more in flow. And for me personally, for my husband, my health has dramatically amplified, as in I feel the healthiest I've felt ever. And I'm 64, not ashamed to say it. And I'm thinking, I'm not game to not do that because I feel so well.
I feel you. It's like why roll the dice on something that's working, right? You may as well keep it up.
Exactly. And so, and then look, I've created, last year I had a client who said that they had been unwell for a year after having COVID. And I thought, oh, that's the immune system. What can I do? What's the immune system? So I looked up the T cells, and I thought, oh, maybe I can create a healing template for the immune system and the T cells. But you know what? I couldn't mindfully do it, Zach. I tried for a week to create a template. So in the end, when I'm doing my pyramid, I went, please, could you reveal to me when I wake up what the process is? And I don't do that. I don't know if I've ever done that. And you know that moment where you're awake, but you're not fully awake, like you're conscious, but not awake. That happened. I saw the whole movie unfold of what I needed to do.
Lovely.
And the next day that client came and he had an existential experience with that visualization. And he writes to me regularly or like every few months and says, I'm still going great. Everything transformed in that hour session. And he said, and it stayed stable. So did what I do heal him? I don't believe that it was what I did or what I said. It was what he did. It was whatever happened in the inner mechanics of what he did. But it's also that he does that process every single day since that moment.
There's an interesting thing that I learned starting my Master of Counseling, right?
Yeah.
And it's this. Like we're studying, like there's heaps and heaps of different modalities, right? And like CBT, I don't know, like psychodynamic, but like REB, like there's heaps of them, right?
Yeah.
And this goes into like there's a few that like they're talking about, but then you can go into the broader sense of counseling, coaching, healing, sort of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
They said that the biggest change, the most important thing that someone can have is a connection to the therapist. Like that's number one, not like, and then it's like, and then like belief in the therapy, right?
Yeah.
Like the actual like techniques of the therapy are quite low, which is really interesting to me. And it's like they've done meta studies after meta studies showing that the key factor is like their belief that it's going to work and their connection to the therapist, right?
Wow.
If obviously commitment to the thing and all of that sort of stuff, it's all very important, but
yeah,
it's almost like it made me go, okay, like, well, what are we studying for, sort of thing. But it's sort of like you do need to know the technique. Like there's sort of like there's a back and forth here to get
Yeah,
people to like, know, and trust you to, to
yeah,
have that. You got to know what you're talking about, right? And actually, you got to
yeah,
understand it. But then also, like, if you can connect and resonates and that sort of stuff, like you've got a connection with this person, you've given them a tool set, they like,
mm,
know, and trust you, and they're
mm,
doing it daily.
mm,
So like you are doing something for that person, whether or not we're talking about like anything, beyond the physical plane.
yeah,
The fact that they believe and connect and trust you itself will help, and it's
yeah,
there's all these like little sort of, this makes me think down the path of placebo, right? Like,
mm,
so like doing the TMS, I asked the psychiatrist, I'm like, where's the, what's the proof of this and stuff? And they're like, oh, we've
yeah.
done, double blind placebos and all this sort of stuff. And then part of me goes, it's like, well, I don't even care whether or not it's working or not. If it feels like it's working, it's
It's
working. You know what I
working.
mean?
Correct.
It's like, um,
100%.
I mean, there is an issue with placebo applied to broader populations, because just because the placebo works for you, it might not work for other people and yada
Correct.
yada. But it's this weird intersection between, like, then you're sort of going into, well, who or what are you even working with? You're talking to this person, right? But who are you talking really to? Like, they're giving you this presentation of them in the moment, but really
That's it.
that's like this collection of thoughts that are sort of mushed together and expressed to you and being like, I'm having this problem. But if that person presents in a different context, like at work, they're a different version of themselves and
Correct.
they're constantly changing. And if you look like, on a cellular level, there is no sort of particular place where the consciousness resides. It's all this sort of connection that sort of emerges. And
Mm.
if you extend beyond the person, where sort of like all of these little individual sort of ants or something collectively making something, it
Yeah.
gets real
I
tricky.
know.
So it's sort of like,
I'm right there with
yeah,
you. I
it's kind
have
of,
that same, like, uh, oh,
it's a weird space, because it's like,
it
oh,
is.
because when you're saying like, am I doing this? Am I doing that? I recently have listened to a few different talks about non-dualism. The
Mm,
idea that, like, it's all sort of, one expression of the same thing. Or like,
mm,
if you look at it from a Hinduistic perspective, it's like Shiva observing Shiva. Like, it's all
yeah.
trippy and weird, but it's an interesting, the part of it that I took away is that when you strip away everything and you get present in that moment, everything sort of dissolves and it just is the moment. And there is a real beauty to just sort of dropping away
Yeah.
those layers and just being.
Yeah.
And you start to see that, like, you working with this person is just another expression of that. It gets sort of psychedelic in its understanding, but it
Yeah.
can help with mental health problems, because if you can
I,
detach back enough, like, it's sort of like you can
yeah.
drop away. So it's like you're not so identified with the solid state. I'm always doing this. I'm always feeling that. These thoughts impact me. It's like, well, hang on, these thoughts are arising. They're just like an energetic movement. And
Mm,
once again, depending on how your spiritualism down that path is just, it's just a happening. It's a frequency and an isness. And if you can just allow, like, we get stuck behind our eyes and we believe ourselves to be the center of the universe, but
mm.
everyone is having that experience and we're all connected, and there's no,
Well, yeah. It's like if you pour a cup of water in the ocean, where's the water? Where's that cup of water going?
yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
It's the ocean, really. And you can't um kind of take that cup of water out again, right? But, just as I said that, I had this flash of where the Atlantic and the Pacific meet. Have you
Hmm.
seen that?
No.
Where one ocean is like brown and the other ocean is blue, but they can't merge.
Mm.
And so there is this delineation of the two oceans, which there's a scientific reason for that, like higher salt content and whatever. But if I went down to the ocean and I put a cup of water in, you would not know, you wouldn't be able to distinguish it. And I don't even know why I'm going there. Of
I I think like, maybe springboarding off that,
yeah.
everything is in relationship to one another, right?
Mm,
You are not you unless you have access to the books, the resources, the meditations, all of the stuff, the house, your
yeah.
partner, and
Yeah.
you're talking to a client. So like, you as an entity, as a thing, as a concept, can only exist in relationship to other things that
Mm.
also can only exist in relationship to you. It's like it's all this connected togetherness, this impermanence, this transience that we're all sort of going, and we sort of try and latch onto these ideas of you, me, us, them, this and that. But
Mm.
without the interconnectedness, there is nothing. It all just sort of dissipates. You know,
It
we need
does.
we need the entirety of the universe all working in concert together to exist here in this
Correct.
moment.
Correct.
And yeah, if you look close enough, there is nothing to hold on to.
Do you know what, Zach? I've had this vision pop in twice now. I
Ooh,
did
yeah.
Vipassana. Have you heard of Vipassana?
Yeah, yeah.
So I woke up one day around 2004 and I went, I need to do this. It just dropped in, I need to do it. So I booked in for, I think it was Easter. And my mum said to me, Julie, I cannot imagine anything worse than sitting in meditation for 10 days and not speaking. And I said, but mum, it's like my whole being is saying, you have to do this.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I did. And I went with the disposition that I was a renunciate, an absolute renunciate. You know, you leave your worldly possessions behind.
Mm,
I went into that space honoring the code of conduct,
mm.
and I did it to the nth degree. Like
If you're gonna do it, you may as well
if I'm
do it,
going to do
right?
it, I'm going to do it like to the
Mm,
nth degree. You know, did I struggle? Oh man, did I
yeah.
struggle? But there was this girl down the front, and she just sat there, and I'm going, if she can do it, I can do it. If she can do it, I can
Repetitive
do it.
meditation.
And that was it. That was like I should have been doing something else. And the teacher, the assistant teacher, would call in different people out, and I got called out. And she then said, I want you to come and see me in the lunch break. And I'm good girl Julie's going, oh my God, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble, because she doesn't even want to say it in front of the others. And so anyway, I went and I saw her, and she said, look, I want you to do something for me. When you go into the next sit, I want you to imagine that you are putting a needle into your spine, and I want you to tell me what you find.
Ooh.
And so I did. And so obviously with the meditation, you're doing like 10, 12 hours of meditating.
Mm.
And what happened was I could imagine the needle, like I was right in there. And she said, I want you to tell me what you find. There was like, I found all these, like, they look like etheric balls, but what was between that was nothing.
Mm.
Like she said, you just keep going, because she might have seen that I was having pain. She said, I want you to put the needle in and find the root of the pain. That was what it was. And so I'm just going like this,
Mm.
and there was no source.
Yep.
I got to the point where it was nothing.
There's nothing.
And that
Beautiful
moment, I
nothing.
think, actually changed who I am
Mm.
at my core.
That's beautiful. I love that
Yeah.
visualization and like the practice. Like, no, really search deep.
Mm,
Like really like look. You know,
yeah.
but sort of like it's like you can do it verbally with you just ask why. You know, like it's like the why needle, right? You're just like, well, why?
Yeah.
Or like, you know, like that's just like, okay, but why? But why? But why? But and you eventually get to this thing of like the answer is like because, you know,
Yeah.
because it is, you know, like you sort of find
Yeah.
this space at the end of,
Yeah.
you know, at the end of your inquiry that's like it's like everything or nothing. And it's like almost like this sort of circular.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
So
I
that
love that.
that kind of dropped in, and I haven't thought about that for a long time, but that's
I I've got a question. Like you sort of
yeah.
you talk like the medical intuitive sort of stuff. Like the intuition is something that I'm leaning towards
Yeah.
heavily now.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, when something seems intuitively right, like let's say I'm like
Mm,
driving a car, for
mm,
example, it almost like there's this sort of overlay upon reality where one part seems like bright and golden and colorful, and the other part doesn't.
mm.
And I've tested this, me being me, and tested, and you can never get both answers, so it's not a proper test. I get it.
Yeah,
But it's sort of like whenever I go down the not intuitive path, either like literally or like physically, metaphysically, whatever, things don't seem to turn out as well as when I do. And
correct.
obviously, it's a once again
Correct.
the agnostic atheist in me is like, yeah, but you're self-proving, whatever. Like, let's just put
Hmm.
that aside. The point is that whatever the cause of that intuition, be it like a collection of past knowledge or it's, divine inspiration, wherever it's coming from, seems to be this place that you can tap into, that you can access, that feels like it's beyond thought and
Mm,
or beyond like conception, beyond like if you try and start to rationalize it and break it down, sometimes you can sort of see the logic of it. Like
mm,
I've played with that sometimes, but
mm,
oftentimes it's sort of beyond that. And I'm sort of learning to trust a lot of that path. It's like, oh, should I, like from a creative perspective, like writing certain words, or from
mm.
like a relationship perspective, reaching out and doing certain things for certain people and stuff. And it's more like the more I just sort of get out of the way of that and sort of just trust this flow, things seems to be going well. Like, and I'm sure that you
Yeah,
can relate to that sort of
absolutely. And one of the things that I look for every day is awe and wonder.
awe and wonder. Yeah, I like
Awe
that.
and wonder, right? I think that they're ingredients of intuition.
Mm,
And the other thing that I have, I guess, trained myself is to watch my thoughts. So
yep.
be more the observer, watch my thoughts, catch my thoughts. And if there's a resonance on intuition that has a like it makes me go, oh wow, awe and
Mm,
wonder. But also I act on that.
mm,
And an interesting thing, the last couple of weeks I've been thinking about this friend of mine that I've had for like 30 years. And we don't speak like every month, but we speak a few times a year. And I had this thought, I must ring Sue. But
This
then
is
I
yeah.
thought, okay, I'll do that after I've done this thing. And so on Sunday, I went, oh, I have to ring Sue.
Mm,
And so I just picked the phone up straight away and I rang her and she said, have your spidey thoughts been something? She said,
yeah.
I've been meaning to call you for the last 2 weeks. I said, well, I've been meaning to call you. So when you get
Yeah.
validation like that, it helps you trust to take the action on the thought.
Look, it's in every aspect. Like I've done martial arts for 20 years, right?
Mm,
And the style I do is it's combative. We're fighting, right?
mm,
But you have to like you train and train and train, and then you have to just let go. Like if I think you're in this position, so I'm going to do this move, and therefore the game's changed. So you
yeah,
sort of have to just almost let go to your body's, like instincts, I suppose. Maybe not intuition. It's
exactly.
like, but your body's
Yeah,
like I've trained my body to move in a certain way. If I get in my own way and start questioning and thinking that,
yeah,
I lose. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's just a game we're playing,
yeah,
ultimately. But yeah, you sort of get validation. It's like let's just work out all of that sort of stuff, get out of its own way, and yeah, the same thing's true for so many different things,
yeah.
like listening to like going down different business pathways or different creative pathways. It's all
Mm,
I guess the sort of the deeper reason why I'm saying this is that since starting this treatment or in general, really, I've always done this, but I'm sort of realizing that there's certain, I don't know, visualizations are the wrong word, but like sort of mental, psychic, meditative, visualizing
mm,
interventions that I'm using on myself,
mhm.
that I'm now getting this intuitive feeling like I need to start sharing this.
Yeah, yeah.
So for example, I'm very like sort of verbal. So there's like there'll be like sort of a verbal mantra or like a prayer that I'll say to myself that sits in a certain part. So
Mm,
for example, in the heart, it would be like a meta meditation, like a loving kindness. May
mm,
you be free of ill will, free of suffering, full of loving kindness. May you be happy to
mm,
to everyone you see, right?
mm,
But then I'm realizing what I do to myself is like I'm trying to sit mindfully, but then I've got these sort of words repeating here, and
mm.
then in different parts of my body, like here I've got certain words, and it's sort of like I'm like, oh, I'm sort of almost there's this sort of like teaching instruction concept coming through that at some stage, like I'm using it on myself more, but now at
It's
some stage I'm going
almost
to be
like
like,
you're coding.
Yeah, like I knew you would have sort of words.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of like,
Yeah.
this sits here, and then
Yeah.
there's other things that sit differently. And then
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, far out, I've got to, because I give people all of these things that I suggest that they do that are more sort of external or more
Mhm.
sort of provable, so to speak. But this is more like it's sort of like a almost self-hypnosis sort of projection, energetic sort of stuff. That sort of
And
it's getting less provable, but it's feeling more important. And it's I was
correct.
wondering
And you
your
know why, Zach? Because that's the inner work.
yeah.
You cannot outsource the inner
Oh,
work.
it's hard though because it's sort of like how like I feel like this weird sort of need to justify it, and if I want to share it with people, it's like you can't
Do you know what I'm
easily
going to
prove
tell?
it, you
I'm going to
know?
say to you what somebody said to me
Mm.
30 years ago,
Here we go. This
literally
is good.
30 years ago. Someone saw me on TV on that show, The Extraordinary, and they said that was like 30 years ago, was when the AIDS crisis was happening. And she said, if I pay for you to go to Ireland, would you go to see an AIDS patient? And I said,
Wow.
I'll have to ask my husband. So Frank said yes. So I got flown to Ireland
Wow.
to see an AIDS patient. And it was one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life.
Mm.
And so after 35 hours of traveling, I arrive in Belfast, and I walk up the stairs to this apartment, and Ron stood up with his walking stick, and I just walked straight in and shook his hand and looked at him and said, "How are you?" And I could see that I took his breath away, actually, but I didn't understand why. But I think because I just went straight in and shook his hand, I didn't even think about it.
Mm.
And then we sat on the sofa together, and he said, "You know what?" He said, "You've done your job." He said, "Now it's time for you to have a holiday." I said, "I haven't done anything yet." He said, "Oh, yes." He said, "You would be surprised what you have done." And I went, "Okay." And then I went to see him, and he had like a leave pass to come out of hospital because he couldn't walk without a walking stick, and he had a detached retina. And so I went and saw him in the hospital the next day, and he said, "They're going to let me come home while you're here so I can spend time with you." And I went, "That's amazing." He said, "Yeah, my retina's reattached and I don't need my walking stick."
Wow.
He said that was just me doing, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
And then he found out that it was my birthday a few days before I flew to Ireland. He said, "Did you have a party?" I said, "No, I don't do parties." He said, "Oh, no, you have to have a party." So he organized a party for me in the apartment, and all his family and friends came. And his sister's boyfriend got me in a corner and was grilling me about what I did. And I was trying to justify what I was doing. After an hour, he went like this. And I went, "Oh, you want me to sit next to you?" He said, "Yes." And he went like this. He said, "Never, ever, ever let me see you do that again." I said, "What? What have I done?" He said, "You do not justify what you do ever. It's nobody's business how you do what you do, and do not justify yourself." And I went, "Wow, okay." And so he was really advanced with his AIDS, and he passed. But after he died, if somebody was challenging me and really grilling me on what I was doing, very left brain kind of questioning, I would imagine it was like I could
He's
see
there,
him
just
up in the corner, and I could hear him saying, "Do not justify yourself." And so that stayed with me as I grew and developed my work. And I've never forgotten that. And And I feel like he's here right now saying you have to share that with Zach so that
I
he
guess
gets it.
my not pushback, my internal state of like I've come from a place of like low self-worth, low self-efficacy, self-belief, right?
Uh-huh.
So I guess you have to have, in order to not have to justify yourself externally, you have to have fully accepted and come to terms with, even if you can't understand fully what you're doing, like your story, you didn't even know what
Yeah,
you did. Like so you did something there. Like you had to trust, faith, hope, and trust, love,
that's it.
this whole thing of the fact that your presence, the you-ness, the thing you're channeling, whatever's going on there, there's something
Yeah,
happening that because if you're not going to just like you can't now just you have to like you can't even try to justify it to yourself, really, you know what I mean?
because
Like
it
it's not,
just is, Zach. You have to get
yeah,
to
it
the
just
point
is, right?
where you can appreciate it just is.
So I guess my follow-up to this, and I've sort of got my answer to it, is I want to make sure that I'm not going to hurt anyone. And for me,
Absolutely. That's the
the
first point.
yeah, like so for me, I'm like, because I did a few sessions with people prior to starting the Master of Counseling course,
Mm.
and afterwards I'm like, okay, these went great, but there was a couple of places where we could have really fallen off the rails, and like we're playing with deep, dark shadow work,
Hmm.
trauma sort of situations. And what if I couldn't capture or hold that person through that space, and then like our session ends and I'm not aware of them, being triggered or traumatized or falling off that cliff, or I can't help them back. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
I didn't have the, like I had this intuitive understanding of how to take people
Hmm.
through, but then the other part of me is like, yeah, you're playing with like real, obviously
Mm.
you're working with real people. You're playing in a space that can be quite triggering. So then it's sort of like this, okay, like I need to have both sides of the thing. Like I've got this sort of intuitive, artistic, spiritual sort of
Yeah,
intuition, but I need to be also informed. And so for me, it was like, okay,
correct.
I need to read the books. I need to do the thing,
You
and
need the
it is helping.
theory. You
Yeah,
need the
and it's
theory and the structure and the framework.
and then the artistry on top, right?
The artistry, no one can teach you.
This is the same thing with martial arts. It's like you do all of the technique, but
Yeah,
until when people start, you fight them, and they're like doing the technique on you, and it's clunky. It's crap. They don't know what they're doing, right? And then
yeah,
you just flow and you do it, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "You have to sort of sit back and deconstruct so you can teach them." But it's like ultimately, it's I've gone beyond the technique,
correct.
but you've
Yeah,
but see, for me, for this sort of intuitive artistry healing sort of thing,
yeah,
the sort of that sort of thing came first, and it was sort of like it felt like it was built upon a very small ledge of technique. So it's like I'm extending this whilst allowing this top bit to grow, you know?
correct.
Mm.
Correct. And what I would say to anyone who's studying is that what you're learning is somebody else's artistry. You're learning
Yeah.
somebody else's method. And if you try to replicate what they're teaching
Mm-mm.
you, it will not flow.
Nope.
So you have to, yeah, absolutely. And I teach Arakira, right?
Mm.
I teach the framework. I teach the
Yeah.
the I have templates, I have scripts, but I also say you need to embody this. You need to integrate this
It
so
has to
that
become
it
theirs,
comes
right?
out of you,
Yeah.
and it's your method of delivering within the framework.
I like that approach a lot. And look, that's a common thing. Once again, to the martial arts, it's common to counseling.
Yeah.
It's sort of like apparently beginning counselors are very clunky because they're like they
They're
are
trying to
presenting with this.
read a
I am,
script.
and it doesn't work. And it's like you've got to. There's a style of counseling called integrative where you take a bit from all, you take the bits from all, and I'm like, as soon as I heard that, I'm like, yeah, okay, clearly that's what I'm going to be doing. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
exactly.
But it's sort of like you've got to the artistry of the delivery, and the same thing with writing. Like I'm teaching people how to write poetry, how to
Mhm.
write in general, but poetry specifically. But ultimately, like there's all of these techniques and tips and tricks and da 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 da. Ultimately, it's just get out of your own way and write what you're feeling.
Yeah,
Just get it flowing. But
yeah.
you sort of sometimes you have to sort of like read and copy and sort of do that sort of copying based learning until you feel that you can like experiment with a little bit of something over here. It's like this whole little bit of a
It's kind of like I don't know why I'm having this imagery, but when somebody learns to ride a skateboard, yeah, they're very stiff
Yeah.
because their whole focus is to actually not fall off. Their focus is not to feel the freedom. Their focus is to not fall off. And then one day something clicks.
Yep.
They bend their knees a little bit and they,
Loosen their body.
and they've
Yeah.
found their rhythm, and then they can skateboard and they won't ever lose that because that's integrated. They've integrated
Yep.
the skills.
Yeah. You got to learn to walk before you can,
You
enjoy
learn
run,
to crawl before you can
Yeah.
learn to walk. See? And what happens is people want to go from an idea to mastery in a day.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't happen. And
You've got to build
actually
upon
got
the
to do the
layers.
work.
Yeah. And that's true for everything, I guess. It's an interesting experience. I guess the other pushback to the justifying yourself, because I like that as a lesson. And I'm sort of speaking for myself, even though I've got my own answers to it, but I'm curious to push for yours, is that like you don't know everything about everything. No one does, right?
No.
So if I'm teaching anything, it's like I don't know the nth degree of it, right? But then it's like you're still presenting this as like a solid teaching, a solid thought, a solid concept, a healing, a whatever you call it, right? But you know that there's more to learn, there's more to uncover, there's more depth.
100%.
So then the question here is that knowing that there's always more to learn, how can you feel comfortable putting out there what you have now, knowing that you will improve later? Do you know what I mean? I know the answer in my mind, but I'm
Because you
curious to
have
see
to
yours.
start somewhere, right? You have to take the first step. You have to take the first step.
You do, but then the pushback to that is if you're working with other people, you're taking it's like a tattoo artist. You don't want to go to the tattoo artist for their first tattoos, right? They have to learn somewhere,
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, I guess it's there's this. Do you see what I'm sort of saying here? This dance of like,
Yes, that's true.
like you've got to make sure you're helping other people, but you do have to start, and then that's the way you learn. And like you got to, it's this intricate dance of helping and working with people. That's
and in terms of my work, Arakira, I have some criteria that they're already practicing as a psychologist or a counselor, or
that's what you're saying.
they may have already studied NLP, they may have already done hypnotherapy, they're already a qualified, or that
they've done some reps.
They've got clients, they're getting results. My work is an advanced process. Yeah. It's not the beginning of someone's journey as a counselor. They actually have to do the work, build the business, build the clients. And then if they want some advanced tools, then I'm teaching that. Yep. And so did I know this like 10 years ago? No. The only way I could work that out is by teaching different people Arakira. And then this last batch of students, they're highly qualified counselors. They're highly qualified therapists that are working with complex PTSD, with trauma, and they've been doing it for years. And they come and they start learning from me. And I felt like I was down here and that they're up here. And they flipped that and went, oh, God, Julie, your work is up here. It's like next level. Our patient or clients that we've been working with for years are getting breakthroughs in sessions. Like,
I can see why, though. Like, a lot of therapy doesn't go into the spaces you will with visualizations and that sort of stuff.
That's right.
It's not. It's this funny intersection. It's like in the West we sort of blocked out all spirituality for science, but there's an intersection that is necessary because, like, there are definitely quacks and bullshit artists and people that are being dodgy and all of that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
In the spiritual space and in the mental, in the scientific space, everywhere, right? And I can see the appeal of pure science, but there's a problem with pure science is that the research has to keep going, so it's going to constantly expand. So there'll be areas outside of its sort of purview
Yeah.
And then some things aren't able to be empirically tested.
Yeah.
You know, like how do you test the efficacy of massage against a double blind procedure? Like you can't have a controlled experiment on massage, right? Because like you get in touch or you're not getting touched. It's like there's things that science can't quite touch. Like, can you do a double blind test of the power of visualization?
Well,
That's a very hard scientific
it's
test to actually get. You know what I mean? Like
correct.
so it's like there'll be things that are forever outside of that purview. So these counselors that are like seeing your things and then integrating it with there, it's like you're sort of
Yeah.
opening up another pathway.
And the thing is that they're not just doing straight Arakira in a session, they're doing
Mm.
EMDR, they're doing
Yeah,
EM, they're
exactly.
doing
Yeah.
hypnotherapy, they're doing reframing with NLP. It's that what they're doing is they're drawing from their toolbox,
You're adding a few more tools to the toolbox.
they're putting more tools in the
Yeah.
toolbox, and then they're going, oh, that's more holistic than I've ever been able to
And
deliver.
you know what? Like adding one tool to like let's say you got 10 tools in the toolbox, adding
Yeah.
that one more tool doesn't give you 11, it gives you like 15. You know, like
Correct.
it's a
Correct.
synergistic sort of
Correct.
thing. Like
Yes.
I've been looking into traditional tantra, which is wildly misunderstood. Yeah, and basically the idea was saying that there's this sort of the meditation he suggested was it was like a visualization. The idea was it's like you focus, you visualize the breath going up and down. You add a mantra, you can add a few other things, and he called it in training. And the idea is that you entrain a few different things all at once. And he explained the logic of it is that like mindfulness on one object might be great, but if you've got a wandering mind, you have to add an extra object. So like we're visualizing and now we're maybe moving. Now we're adding breath work. And I'm like, oh, and he's like, he was saying all of these things that already existed, but he put it together in a wording that I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And like, this is why I like Tai Chi. Tai Chi involves a visualization, involves a body movement, involves a mindfulness practice. I'm like, oh, I'm doing Tantra through, like, he sort of reframed what I was, you know what I mean? It's this
Yes.
weird space. And it's sort of like, yeah, it added extra tools and gave me these extra things. And like, now I can make my Tai
Yeah.
Chi practice better because I'm actively pulling from this Tantra practice. And it's sort
Yeah.
of like, there's a synergy between the two. Now, I'm not a Tai Chi master. I'm not I'm just sort of playing with these different spaces, but there's a beauty in the intersectionality, you know?
There's an expansion. Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
And what people are looking for is expansion.
Mm,
And expansion and comes from the inner work. And that's what I call insourcing. So, yes, you can outsource to a teacher, to a doctor, to a therapist, but that's only like a part of it. You actually have to insource the rest.
one of the principles that I suggest to people is that it's all on you, as in everything is on you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you block out everyone else's help or you only try and fix yourself, but it means that like there is like you are the closest person to yourself. You know what I mean? You know yourself better. So
Yeah.
for me, I have to outsource my mental health therapy to get TMS, right? That's something that I'm going
Correct.
down. But I have to be the one to take the steps to do it.
Correct.
I have to get myself there. When I try
Correct.
medication, I have to swallow that pill.
Same.
And I'm doing, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it's like you know, like the analogy of like from a back to the start of the talk, the trauma stuff, right? People did some not so great things to me. You
Yeah.
know, like the analogy is like they've knocked you down into the glass on the ground and they've walked off. If you wait in the ground, you know, on the broken glass for them to come back and pick you up and apologize and dust you off and heal you, that's never going to happen.
It's not.
Not never, but most of the time, the cause of your pain and your trauma and your issues, it's not going to fix itself. You have to be the one to swallow the pride, swallow the ego, accept that life isn't fair, get yourself up and get the help you need. And
Yeah.
some of that will be doing the self work. Some of, excuse me, will be reaching out. It is all on you.
Yeah.
But that's still, it sounds lonely, but it's like, no, it's all on me. Like, it's like, okay, it's on me to open up and accept Maria's help. You know what I mean? It's on me to listen to her and to accept, to be able to like accept that love. Oh, I'm having issues there. Okay, well, it's on me to go get therapy. I have to do the work. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
And
know,
I
like,
think that
ah,
is a really good space to wrap up because we have had mammoth chats
mammoth
that
chats.
I
Oh,
think that
if
we
you want
need
to
to
do a
have another
sequel, we
chat.
can. Yeah, yeah. Like you
Yeah.
let me know. I'm happy. And yeah, it's been great. This is really good. I think just for my audience, you have a lot of interesting stuff, and you're helping a lot of people. And like I said, I'm doing your guided. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. I'm calling it like the Archangel Spirit Doctor
Yep. I
meditation.
think I call it the spirit grid.
Spirit grid, yeah. Basically, it's like as I'm going in, it's like you're imagining
Yeah.
angels and healing, and just it's a positive visualization to make
It's
the treatment, the therapy things. And
exactly.
I
And it's a
recommend what you're doing. It's great.
frequency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's and it's a good way to reframe. Like
Mhm.
rather than sitting there just not focusing on anything, it's like I can actually be doing some sort of inner healing work on myself whilst this procedure is going. It's like let's get the double benefit going, shall we?
Exactly. I'm up for
So
that too.
so I appreciate it. And yeah, if you want to have me back on, we can chat some more.
I
This
would
is
love
great.
that, Zach. So any last thoughts?
Oh, any last thoughts down any of these paths? I would suggest that it's everyone should develop a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
I like, some sort of daily meditation,
Yeah.
sitting in silence, looking at, just focusing on the breath, or, something you can see, hear, touch, taste, smell, this sort of stuff, just
Mm.
some sort of spiritual practice of visualization, just anything that
Yeah.
you're the act of doing that. I like sort of mindfulness. That's what I started with, but start with something, do it daily, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just
Correct.
anything, and
Yeah.
just lock that in your day. And that will be the sort of the solid base that you can then step towards any of
Yeah.
these other options. And,
Exactly.
like that'll give you the exercise, like, we're pegging that to the exercise, you're pegging that to seeing the doctor, to reading the books, whatever it else is just get that solid spiritual practice in meditation, visualization, otherwise.
Yeah.
Because yeah, that's I think everyone needs it, and it's not done enough. I think that's the sort of the thought I'll leave it with, and
Yeah.
do it daily. And if you miss a
Do
day,
it
get back
daily.
on.
And I think there's this famous quote, the journey of 1,000 steps starts with the first step.
Yeah, if you're going to eat an elephant, you do it bite by bite,
One bite
right?
at a time.
That whole
That's
thing. And like,
yeah.
yeah, like if you miss a day, that's okay.
It
Start
is.
again the next day. Just
That's it.
don't stop.
That's it.
No worries. I
Thank
appreciate
you
your
so
time.
much, Zach.
No worries.
Thank you so much for tuning into this amazing episode of Let's Chat with Julie Lewin and our special guest, Zachary Phillips. We went to so many places I can't even begin to describe the joy that I experienced in having this conversation with Zach. And we both shared our inner journey to you. We hope that this was able to help you on your journey, give you some aha moments, some light bulb moments where you went, I need to do that, or I need to check that out. And so if you enjoyed our episode, like and follow our podcast wherever it is that you listen, so it can get into the hands of people who need it most. Also, your insights shape the way that our podcast will develop. So if there's someone that you think we should have a chat with, or there's a topic that you want us to talk about, please let us know in the comments wherever you watch. Thank you again for listening. And remember, the journey to self-discovery and growth is an ongoing process. It doesn't happen overnight, and it continues beyond the airwaves. Until next time, may you find courage, peace, and magic on your own unique path. See ya.